So why did we pay close attention to actually the hands, the fingers, and the flannel shirt? Really, the arms were really tricky. The movements were tricky because the technology at the time created this wobble effect. Every time the arms stopped quickly, they would just kind of wobble back and forth because of the mechanics in the animatronic. So for the scenes requiring very intricate finger dexterity and exploration, they hired a mime to sit underneath E.T. or the table or wherever the camera was, wearing these very long latex E.T. gloves and arms, to mimic the hands and the arms, and almost blindly explore the world in a very fluid way. So they're kind of reaching up in front of the alien, blindly, of course, exploring the world, opening the beer, playing around with the groceries and that kind of thing, or, the food inside the fridge. And that's why it was necessary, of course, to have the alien wear a flannel shirt as he explored in the refrigerator, because otherwise you would see that the hands aren't even remotely connected to the animatronic, to E.T. himself. The head of the E.T. puppet was placed above the head of the actors. So the actors could actually see through little slits in the puppet's chest. The puppet was created, it took about 4 months to create E.T. at a cost of $1.5 million. And at the time, that's an astronomical amount of money. Spielberg declared that it was something that only a mother could love. So if Jaws was a success, E.T. blew it away, blew it out of the water. It became the highest grossing film of all time up until that point. So what actually goes on under the hood? How do they actually build these things? What are they actually made of? Well, here are the steps required to actually go, produce an animatronic. First, of course, you have to design it up, right? This is where you're actually just sketching out, just trying to figure out what the movements are going to be, what movements are going to be required by the script, what it's going to look like, where you're thinking about where you're going to put all the mechanics. This sketch is from the movie Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, in which squirrels appeared to do quality assurance on acorns. And what's interesting about this is there were some animatronic squirrels that were doing this, but somebody, I'm not sure who, actually trained a squirrel to do this. And so they had an actual squirrel actually doing this as well. I don't know how many times they did it and how successful it was, but there were animatronics involved for that little guy QAing all those acorns. So after the design, then comes what's called life casting or sculpting. And what life casting is you make a body cast for suits and costumes. You take impressions of teeth, heads and arms for makeup effects, as well as, safety techniques and stuff like that. Sculpting creatures, prosthetic makeups, character busts, puppets, toys, action figures, maquettes, eyes, teeth, skin, wrinkles, even deteriorating zombie flesh has to be kind of sculpted up. And they use various mediums to do this, including oil clay, Chavant, Romoplasticina, clean clay, monster clay, water clay, polymer, stuff like that. Super sculpty, even foam, and of course, digital sculpting. People who aren't using the actual traditional media, you can do it in Mudbox and ZBrush. So that's where the life casting comes from. And once you have that, here's a great look, a ton of work involved. This is all clay right now. This is the Triceratops from Jurassic Park, the one that was kind of sick, probably eating bad berries or something like that. After the life casting and the sculpting comes the mold making. And the mold making is where you're actually taking the cast and creating the invert of the cast, so you actually have the mold, so you can create many duplicates of it. This is obviously a mold of Admiral Akbar from Star Wars, and you're not just going to want to make one because things happen on set. Accidents, lights could melt things, or someone has a rip or a tear, or something gets lost. So with a mold, you can keep making many copies of the same thing. So that's a pretty important process. Painting and surfacing, of course. This is what's going to actually make this thing look real. These images are huge crocodiles from the 1999 movie Lake Placid. And as you can see, they absolutely look fantastic. So the painting of it really goes a long way to actually making this work. Some fantastic looking crocodiles. Now, here's where the guts of the animatronic occur, adding the mechanics and the electronics. Much of the skill of building an animatronic figure is actually in the design and construction of the figure's mechanical components. What's involved? Joints, cables, pneumatic cylinders, rods, servos, internal structures. They're the components that allow the lifelike movements of the animatronic figure. Practically every part that is needed is custom-made piece. There's really no, hey, let's just reuse this rig for this animatronic or this. That's never the case, because you have to very creatively find ways to fit it inside the animatronic. And space inside the character is very, very limited. So yeah, gimbals and cables. Gimbals are for eye and neck movement. Cables transfer movements to different limbs. Rotating joints for elbows and fingers and tails and knees and wrists and stuff like that. And really importantly, compressed air cylinders called pneumatics are used for everything from breathing, chest expansion, facial muscles. So that's a pretty important part. Hair and fur goes a long way on your creature. Where would this little guy be without all that cute fur? All right. If you're a fan of the 80s movies, you probably recognize this as Gizmo from Gremlins. All right. An artist would punch the hair. An artist would punch the hair individually with a needle. And it takes a very long time to do this, laying hair on various surfaces and techniques. And then to get it to kind of flow a certain way, you would use what's called electrostatic flocking. So the hair kind of curls back or goes where it actually needs to go. Electrostatic flocking utilizes an electric charge to orient fibers and promote their kind of perpendicular alignment. One animatronic artist that I'm really a big fan of is master designer Gustav Hogan, and he has created dozens of animated elements in animatronic effects, prosthetic makeup effects for television and film. You may not know him, but you've seen his work. His specialty is animatronic effects, prosthetic makeup effects for TV and film. His work has been seen in movies like Prometheus, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Clash of the Titans, Star Wars, The Force Awakens, Rogue One, and many, many more. Let's take a quick look at some of the things that he builds, a little behind the scenes of his animatronics, to see these things come to life. It's enlightening, and it's at times a little spooky too. So take a look at his reel.